That highly specific, like very uncomfortable feeling that kind of creeps in on a Sunday afternoon
Oh, yeah.
where you're just sitting on the couch, not really doing much of anything. Or, I mean, maybe it hits you on a Tuesday evening when you decide to just close your laptop an hour early.
Right, and it's just this quiet, nagging whisper.
Exactly. This whisper in the back of your head just saying, you're falling behind.
It is, it's a profoundly universal guilt. I mean, we are so deeply programmed to feel it that our bodies, like, they actually have a physiological stress response
Mm.
to just doing nothing.
A literal stress response to resting.
Yeah, your heart rate might even tick up a bit.
Wow. And, well, that is exactly what we are tearing apart today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking at this fascinating stack of material, recent neurobiology papers, organizational psychology case studies, and some really compelling sleep data.
It's a great mix of sources.
It really is. And our mission today, to figure out why this concept of strategic laziness or, deliberate rest isn't just this nice to have luxury. It is actually the ultimate biological secret weapon for higher creative output and complex problem solving.
Right, it's the biology of it that's so fascinating.
But before we get to the solution, I feel like we really need to look at the problem. Because that guilt we feel about resting, it manifests in completely different ways depending on, well, where you are in life.
It does. It evolves as we age. It takes on new masks. But the underlying anxiety is driven by the exact same mechanism. It's the fear of irrelevance, really.
Think about it, like if you are in your 20s, this guilt usually shows up as just pure comparison.
Absolutely.
You're looking around, you see people your age posting these massive achievements, their promotions, their side hustles, and suddenly taking a nap feels like you're actively losing ground in some invisible race.
You feel like you're failing the hustle, basically.
Yes, failing the hustle. But then, you hit your 30s, and the flavor of that guilt shifts entirely.
Right, because it becomes about pressure. Just stacking on top of pressure. You have your career, maybe serious relationships, financial obligations, mortgages, and they're all pulling at your attention simultaneously.
It's exhausting.
Totally. So at that stage, rest stops feeling like losing a race and starts feeling like a luxury you simply cannot afford. It feels fundamentally irresponsible to step away.
Irresponsible is the perfect word for it. And what happens in your 40s is, I think, almost more insidious.
How so?
Well, your thinking patterns start to calcify around this core belief that your worth is strictly equal to your output. Like if you aren't producing, you aren't valuable.
Right. So slowing down feels like giving up.
Exactly. And if you're past 45, there's often this quiet, heavy fear that time is running out. Every idle moment feels like a squandered opportunity to secure your legacy.
But wherever you are on that timeline, the core tension is identical. Society has relentlessly pushed this belief that rest is the enemy of achievement.
If you want to achieve more, you must work more.
Exactly. It's a very linear, very industrial way of looking at human capability.
Well,
Like we're treating the brain like a factory machine that just needs more coal to produce more widgets.
okay, let's unpack this because here is the central premise of our deep dive today, and it completely flips that industrial mindset on its head.
It really does.
Psychology and neuroscience are now proving that this belief that rest is the enemy of achievement is not only completely wrong, but it is actually the specific bottleneck blocking the exact breakthroughs you're trying to achieve.
And what's fascinating here is that we aren't just talking about preventing burnout.
Right.
We are talking about the actual neurological mechanisms of how ideas are formed. To understand why we need rest, we have to look at what constant, relentless grinding physically does to the neural pathways in the brain.
So I was thinking about this, and the best way I can picture it is like lighting. Constant work, that hyper-focused grind is like a laser pointer.
I like that analogy.
Right, because a laser pointer is incredible if you need to hit one specific tiny target across the room. But if you want to illuminate the whole room to see what else is in there, a laser pointer is completely useless. You need a floodlight for that.
That analogy maps beautifully onto the neuroscience, actually. Your brain essentially relies on two major opposing modes of operation.
Yeah, okay.
The laser pointer is what researchers call the task-positive network. This network lights up when you're focused on a specific external task. Answering an email, balancing a spreadsheet, driving a car in heavy traffic.
Yeah,
It relies on a cognitive mechanism called directed attention.
which is that narrow, highly effortful, goal-focused thinking you do all day long.
Exactly. Directed attention is incredibly useful for executing a known sequence of steps. If you know exactly what needs to be done, you use directed attention to just plow through it.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. but it demands a high metabolic cost. Your brain is burning through glucose to keep your focus locked on that one specific target. But structurally, it is terrible for generating new ideas.
Why is it so terrible for new ideas, though? Like, what is physically happening in the brain?
Well, when you are in the task-positive network, your brain actively suppresses activity in other regions to prevent distractions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's forcing electrical signals down highly trafficked, heavily myelinated neural pathways. It's efficient, but it means you are literally locked out of the parts of your brain that house unrelated memories, bizarre associations, and abstract concepts.
So it's blocking the creative stuff on purpose.
Yes,
Yeah.
neuroscience shows us that under constant directed attention, your brain's ability to make loose, distant connections between seemingly unrelated ideas actually shrinks.
That is wild.
You start solving problems the same way every single time because your mind literally never gets the biological clearance to wander somewhere new.
But we ignore this shrinking effect because, busyness feels so incredibly good to us.
That's a huge rush.
It feels like proof of effort. If my calendar is full and I'm exhausted at the end of the day, society tells me I must be doing something right.
It creates a powerful dopamine-driven illusion of progress. But the reality is that constant motion without cognitive rest quietly narrows your thinking.
So you produce more, but it's worse.
You produce more volume, perhaps, but the originality drops to zero. You get that nagging sense of working incredibly hard but not actually moving forward because you were just digging the same hole deeper instead of looking for a better spot to dig.
Man. So if the task-positive network is the laser forcing us down that single pathway, what is the floodlight?
The floodlight is the default mode network, or the DMN. This is the network that activates when your mind is unfocused, when you're wandering, daydreaming, or just resting without any external stimuli.
And people used to think this was just nothing, right?
Yeah, for a long time, the scientific community thought of this as just an idle state, like a screensaver for the brain. But advanced neuroimaging now shows the DMN is incredibly active.
What's it doing?
It is the time when your brain quietly reorganizes information, tests out different synaptic connections, and links ideas that were sitting in entirely different mental folders. This is the biological mechanism that produces sudden flashes of insight.
It's the classic shower thought phenomenon, just explained with brain scans.
Exactly. There is a brilliant study from researchers at the University of California, Santa Barbara that proves this. They gave participants a complex creative thinking task and then gave them a break.
Okay.
Some kept working straight through. Some took a break with a highly demanding mental task, like a complex puzzle. And some took a break with a simple, undemanding activity that allowed their minds to wander.
I'm assuming the mind wanderers won out.
By a massive margin. The people who took the simple, undemanding break performed far better on the subsequent creative tasks than both the people who kept grinding and the people who took a mentally demanding break.
That's amazing.
The key biological takeaway was that the kind of break mattered more than the length of it. The brain needed a specific environment to trigger the default mode network.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because if directed attention is the problem, how do we actually activate that default mode network in the real world? Right. I was reading this case study in the material about a software engineer named Michael, and it feels like the perfect real-world test of this theory. I'd love to break down what actually happened to his brain here, because he was the classic grinder. He treated breaks as a sign of weak discipline.
Michael's situation is incredibly common, especially in high-pressure, cognitively demanding fields. He had hit a wall on a massive, complex architecture decision for his company's software.
Right, he was just stuck.
Completely stuck. For 2 entire weeks, he just cycled through the same 3 flawed solutions. He was pushing harder, working later, and getting absolutely nowhere.
Because he was trapped in the task-positive network.
Completely trapped. Finally, out of pure frustration, a colleague tells him to just leave the building and run an unrelated errand.
Just get out of here.
Yeah. So Michael, who is highly skeptical that this will help, leaves his phone on his desk and walks to a repair shop a few miles away to pick up his car. He removes all screens, all podcasts, all work inputs. He just walks.
And on that walk, seemingly out of nowhere, an entirely new structural approach drops into his head.
Out of nowhere.
A completely different way to solve the architecture problem. It was so sudden and fully formed, he had to stop and frantically write it down on a napkin before he lost it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Michael's story perfectly demonstrates what a team associated with Harvard Medical School found in their extensive research on mind wandering.
What did they find?
They discovered that moments when your attention drifts are strongly associated with problem solving that is happening entirely below conscious awareness.
Below awareness, so you don't even know you're working on it.
Exactly. When Michael was staring at his screen, his prefrontal cortex was trying to force a solution down a single neural lane. When he walked to the mechanic in silence, his prefrontal cortex relaxed its grip.
It let go.
Yeah, his brain was finally allowed to search the entire map of his knowledge, connecting his current problem with unrelated architecture patterns he'd learned years ago.
Meaning your brain is still working on the problem, even when you think you've completely stepped away from it.
It is working on it better, because it's no longer constrained by the narrow pathways of directed attention. The subconscious brain has massive processing power, but it needs the conscious brain to get out of the way to use it.
And it isn't just taking a walk that does this. There is also this fascinating link to sleep, which I never really understood as a productivity tool until now.
Oh, sleep is huge. This raises an important question about how we utilize the edges of our day. The research points heavily to the hypnagogic state.
The hypnagogic state.
Right. This is that strange, foggy, transitional window right between wakefulness and sleep. You aren't fully awake, but you aren't in deep REM sleep yet either.
Oh, I know that state. It's when your thoughts start getting a little weird, a little disjointed, and you start seeing strange associations, like you're half dreaming.
Yes. Biologically, what is happening is your brain waves are shifting from the fast, alert beta waves of daytime thinking into the slower alpha and theta waves.
Okay.
As this happens, the executive control center of your brain loosens its grip. Sleep researchers have documented that this specific transitional state is linked to unusually creative and associative thinking.
Because the filter is gone.
Exactly. The brain starts throwing seemingly random concepts together to see if they fit. It's why so many artists, writers, and scientists report that their most profound ideas arrive right as they're drifting off to sleep, or in the few moments right after they wake up.
It all synthesizes so perfectly. Like you have the UC Santa Barbara research on undemanding breaks turning on the floodlight.
Right.
You have the Harvard Medical School research showing the subconscious doing the heavy lifting during a silent walk. And then research from Cornell University, which found that people report their most creative insights during passive, low-demand activities far more often than during concentrated work.
Which brings us to a fundamental biological truth. Insight is not purely a product of effort. It is a product of the rhythm between effort and rest.
The rhythm.
Yeah. You need the intense effort of the task-positive network to load the raw information into your brain, but you desperately need the default mode network to synthesize it into something useful.
Okay, I have to push back here on behalf of the listener, because there is a very obvious, glaring question staring us in the face.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a silent walk to the mechanic works miracles for the brain, why doesn't an hour on the couch scrolling through social media feel refreshing? Because honestly, scrolling feels completely passive.
It does feel that way.
Right, I'm just sitting there, my physical body is resting. Why doesn't that count as the kind of rest that triggers the default mode network?
That is the ultimate modern trap. We have to look at the psychological and biological definition of rest when it comes to creativity. True cognitive rest requires having zero external information to process.
But watching a 30-second video doesn't feel like processing information. It feels like turning my brain off.
It feels that way to you, but neurologically it is the exact opposite. When you are scrolling, your visual cortex is firing rapidly, your emotional centers are reacting to the content, your amygdala is scanning for threats or excitement.
Oh, wow.
You're reading text, you're judging, you're laughing. Heavy screen use keeps your brain entirely locked in a state of directed attention.
So it's still the laser pointer.
It's the laser pointer firing all over the place. You are constantly shifting your focus every 3 to 5 seconds to a new stimulus. Your brain is essentially sprinting on a cognitive treadmill. It cannot activate the default mode network because it's too busy reacting to the fire hose of external data.
So screens are a major blocker because they hijack the system. What are the other enemies of real rest? Because it seems like modern life is practically engineered to keep us out of the default mode network.
It really is engineered that way. Beyond screens, there are significant physical and biological blockers that keep the brain in a state of high alert. Chronic sleep restriction is one of the fastest ways to shut down the creative benefits of the DMN.
Just not sleeping enough.
Right. The brain requires consolidated deep rest to physically clear out metabolic waste and reorganize those neural pathways. If you are chronically exhausted, your brain shifts into a biological survival mode.
Survival mode.
Yeah, it conserves energy by sticking to known, rigid routines. It literally cannot afford the metabolic cost of creative thinking.
And I imagine our daily caffeine habits play a role here too. Like everyone runs on coffee.
A massive role. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in the brain, which is the chemical that makes you feel sleepy.
Okay.
Constant caffeine use, especially late into the afternoon, keeps your central nervous system artificially locked in a sympathetic fight-or-flight state.
Wow.
So you might sit on the couch and tend to switch off and relax in the evening, but chemically, your body is still braced for action. This neurological alertness completely blocks that natural cognitive drift we need.
I was also surprised to see diet brought up in relation to creative problem solving. Like I wouldn't have immediately connected a lunchtime sandwich to a lack of good ideas.
It plays a quieter but crucial role in maintaining cognitive stability. Heavy reliance on sugar and refined carbohydrates for quick energy produces sharp peaks and dramatic crashes in your blood glucose levels.
So the sugar crash ruins the rest.
Basically, when your energy crashes, your body seeks equilibrium, which triggers the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol.
And then what happens?
This usually pushes people toward more stimulation, reaching for more caffeine, opening another tab, seeking more frantic activity, at the exact moment when the mind most needs a calm, unstimulated window.
So if you are exhausted, overcaffeinated, crashing from a sugar high, and staring at a phone, your default mode network essentially has zero biological chance of turning on.
None at all. And this leads to a very harmful myth we need to dismantle. There is this pervasive idea in corporate culture that visible overwork shows more commitment.
Oh yeah, that the person sending emails at 11 p.m. is the most valuable, dedicated employee.
The classic hustle culture badge of honor. But organizational studies point to a massive risk here. Visible overwork almost always masks a severe decline in the quality of thinking.
Quality over quantity.
Yes. Organizations are slowly waking up to the reality that hours worked does not equal value produced, especially in knowledge work. A well-rested brain operating with a functional default mode network can solve in 1 hour a complex problem that an exhausted brain might struggle with for a week.
Right.
Strategic laziness isn't about abandoning your responsibilities. It is about protecting unstimulated pauses inside a life that still has structure and intense effort.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, in your actual daily routine? How do we build a practice of strategic laziness into a schedule that is already, overflowing with meetings and obligations?
We need practical steps.
Yeah. Let's look at the case study of Sarah, a marketing strategist, because her story is basically the blueprint for getting this wrong and then getting it right.
Sarah was caught deep in that trap of visible busyness. She was convinced her professional worth was measured by how tightly packed her calendar looked.
Completely. I mean, she answered messages late at night, she ate lunch at her desk while reviewing analytics, and she treated every single unscheduled hour as wasted time. She was a machine.
But machines break down.
Exactly. The cracks started to show. Her output remained steady, like she was still producing, but her ideas became incredibly repetitive. During a performance review, her director basically told her she was highly competent but no longer original. She was just recycling old campaigns with new fonts.
Because she had zero incubation time. Her laser pointer was on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
She never gave her brain the biological clearance to wander.
Right, and her turning point was a mandatory week off that she actually resented having to take.
She didn't even want the break.
She didn't want to stop working. But without her usual inputs, meetings, and constant pings, she found herself just taking long, aimless walks. And by the third day, the ideas just started arriving completely unprompted.
In the shower, on walks.
Yeah, ideas that had nothing to do with forcing a brainstorm on a whiteboard. When she got back, she generated a pitch that her team called the strongest concept they'd seen in 2 years.
Sarah's story illustrates that you cannot wait for insight to magically happen. You have to construct the physical and temporal space for it to occur.
But how do we actually do this? Like, if I'm listening to this on my commute and I have back-to-back meetings all day, how do I implement this without my boss thinking I'm just slacking off?
It is about redesigning the micro moments of your day, rather than needing a week-long sabbatical.
Micro moments.
Yeah. The first major shift is managing your transition moments. Think about the walk from your car to your office building, or the time you spend waiting in line at the grocery store, or the 10 minutes between Zoom calls.
The natural gaps where we immediately reach for our phones or pop in our earbuds to listen to something.
Stop filling those natural gaps with audio or visual input. Let a few of those transitions stay completely empty each week. That unstructured space is pure gold for your brain's background processing.
Just be bored.
If you just let yourself be bored for the 3-minute walk to your car, you are giving your DMN a chance to boot up.
What about during the actual workday, though? How do we build in rest when we are technically on the clock?
You schedule a 15 to 20-minute boredom window.
A boredom window. I love that.
It sounds completely counterintuitive, but you intentionally block time on your calendar with zero input. No phone, no music, no reading, no chatting with a coworker, just sitting or taking a slow walk.
And you just defend that time.
You have to treat it like a hard, non-negotiable appointment with your own neurobiology. It is one of the most reliable ways to force the default mode network online during a chaotic day.
I imagine another big shift is how we handle lunch, because I know I am extremely guilty of watching YouTube or answering emails while I eat.
Most people are. Try to have one completely screen-free meal a day. Eating while unstimulated gives your central nervous system a crucial reset. It stops the constant, low-grade cognitive multitasking that drains your glucose reserves and floods your system with stress hormones.
Which ties perfectly into another great habit, practicing single tasking during low-stakes moments, like when you are washing the dishes or folding laundry at home.
Right.
The instinct is always to put on a show or a podcast so you don't feel like you are wasting time. But if you just wash the dishes, just fold the clothes and let your mind wander, you are essentially training your nervous system to tolerate unstructured thought again.
You are building up a tolerance to boredom.
Exactly.
We also need to talk about napping, which might be the most welcome biological tool for some listeners. Taking a brief 10 to 20-minute nap in the early afternoon is highly strategic.
But how do you justify a nap in the middle of a workday? Like, culturally, that's so tough.
You justify it with the data. Sleep research proves that brief naps measurably improve associative thinking and problem-solving immediately afterwards.
So it's literally work.
It is. It isn't just about recovering from physical exhaustion. It's about actively putting your brain into that highly creative hypnagogic state we discussed earlier. You are dipping your brain into the exact brainwave state required to solve complex problems.
And finally, we have to talk about setting boundaries. Setting an actual visible end time for your workday.
This is critical for psychological detachment. If you have an undefined end time, if you're always reachable, always checking messages after dinner, your brain remains in a low-level state of readiness all evening.
You never clock out mentally.
Your sympathetic nervous system never fully disengages, which means you never fully recover. Setting a hard boundary signals to your brain that the effortful, directed attention part of the day is genuinely over, allowing the deeper restorative processes to begin.
I think tying all these habits together, the boredom windows, the silent transitions, the nap, it requires a massive fundamental mindset shift. We have to change the internal language we use when we are resting.
That is perhaps the most important psychological step of all. When you are sitting on the couch without your phone or taking a walk without a podcast, you have to stop telling yourself, I am being lazy.
You have to reframe it. You have to call it what it biologically is. Incubation time.
Language shapes our reality. If you call it lazy, your brain will trigger that universal guilt we started the show with, and you will rush back to meaningless busy work just to soothe your anxiety.
Right, to stop feeling guilty.
But if you call it incubation time, you give yourself the psychological permission to stay in that unstimulated state long enough for the next great idea to actually form.
So what does this all mean? To summarize this entire deep dive, true growth, original thinking, and complex problem solving simply do not come from relentless, unbroken grinding. We have to stop viewing rest as a reward we only get to enjoy after we've finished the work.
Rest is not the reward for the work. It is a required biological step in doing your best work.
It's the floodlight. You cannot see the whole room without it. And that brings us right back to that Sunday afternoon feeling we talked about at the very beginning. That guilt that creeps in when you are just sitting there. The next time you feel that anxiety rising, I want you to remember that your brain is actually doing exactly what it needs to do to prepare you for whatever comes next.
Consider your routine tomorrow. At some point, you're going to find yourself with 2 spare minutes. Maybe you are waiting for a meeting to start, or standing in line for coffee, or just walking from your car to your front door.
You are going to feel that automatic, almost magnetic urge to reach into your pocket and pull out your phone to process some quick information.
But what if, just for those 2 minutes, you didn't? What kind of unexpected breakthrough might your subconscious hand you if you simply gave your brain the rare biological gift of 2 minutes of pure, uninterrupted boredom?